In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. We salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Councilor Elliott.
Here.
Mayor Martin.
Here.
Councilor Armin Mercia.
Here.
Councilor Rita Mercia.
Here.
Councilor Milanazzo. Here. Councilor Ramirez.
Here.
Councilor Broderick.
Here.
Councilor Caulfield.
Here.
Councilor Donahue.
Here.
Chair recognizes Councilor Milanazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a moment of silence in Dr. Chambers for Pat Kingoulis. Pat is a longtime employee, was a longtime employee of the Lowell Housing Authority. She was a coordinator there for over 3 decades. I had the pleasure of working with Pat. She was president of the Julian Steele Tenant Council, also the George Flanagan Tenant Council, and Pat unfortunately passed away this past weekend. She is survived by 2 daughters and a son, Anthony. She also has 4 grandchildren, and I know that she was very close to her grandson, Anthony Jr., who I know will miss his grandmother dearly. She was just a tremendous person and asset not only to the community but certainly to the Lowell Housing Authority, and she will be sorely missed.
Okay. Thank you. If we could rise in a moment of silence. Okay, the first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the March 14th meeting. Motion to approve by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Ramirez. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? That minutes are approved. Next matter is a communication from the city clerk requesting reappointment for a 3-year term effective April 1st, 2006. Mayor William Martin and members of the Lowell City Council, in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 12, I respectfully request the City Council's consideration in seeking the appointment of an additional 3-year term effective April 1st, 2006. I have had and truly enjoyed the privilege of serving the City Council, past City Councils, and the citizens of Lowell for 4 consecutive terms, having been appointed as City Clerk on April 1st, 1993. Look forward to meeting you relative to this request. Thank you in advance for your consideration. I remain very truly yours, Richard C. Johnson, City Clerk. What's the wish of the council?
So
Move approval of the reappointment of Mr.
Move,
Johnson.
motion to approve by Councilor Armin Mercier, second by Councilor Caulfield. Roll call, please.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Armin Mercia.
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercia.
Yes.
Councilor Milanazzo.
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Okay. Under the city manager's portion of the agenda, the first item is a request for out-of-state travel from the Fire Chief Bill DeRocha to allow fire investigator to attend the 28th Annual New England Arson Seminar in Manchester, New Hampshire, from May 22nd to May 26th. Funds for this travel expense come from the manager's out-of-state travel account. It's the wish of the council.
Move approval.
Motion to approve by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Rita Mercier. Roll call.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Armin Mercia.
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercia.
Yes.
Councilor Milanazzo.
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Okay. Chair recognizes the city clerk.
The mayor was kind of hasty this evening to move the meeting along, and I know we have a long agenda. I just wanted to thank the city council for their show of confidence in my ability to perform my duties as city clerk, and I want to thank you for providing me that opportunity. Thank you.
Well deserved.
Okay. Well deserved, according to, from what I'm hearing from the council, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you.
Next item is a notice of reappointment and request for confirmation from the city manager Pursuant to the authority granted to me under City Charter, Section 24, and Mass General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 24, it is with pleasure I am reappointing Susan A. LeMay, 40 Robert Street, Lowell, Mass. 01854, Joel H. Cohen, 35 Long Meadow Drive, Lowell, Mass., and Karen Golden, 60 Lead Street, Lowell, Mass., as members of the Board of Assessors to 3-year terms expiring March 21st, 2009. Confirmation by the City Council is required for these appointments and is hereby requested. And we'd be happy to answer any inquiry you may have. Very truly yours, John F. Cox. What's the wish of the council?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilor Rita Mercier, seconded by Councilor Milonazo. Roll call.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Armin Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo?
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Okay. Next item is a request for reappointment and request for confirmation from the city manager. Dear Mayor Martin and members of the City Council, pursuant to the authority vested in me as city manager under Section 5A, Chapter 566 of the Acts of 1983, I am reappointing the following person to the Lowell Historic Board: Reynold Ilg, 146 Raven Road, Lowell, Mass., as the Greater Lowell Bar Association member for a term expiring February 28, 2007, retroactive to February 28, 2005. Under the above statute, confirmation by the council is required for this appointment and is hereby requested. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Very truly yours, John F. Cox, City Manager.
Move for approval.
Motion to approve by Councilor Broderick, second by Councilor Caulfield. Roll call.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Armin Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo?
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Okay. Next item is a request for notice of reappointment and request for confirmation. Dear Mayor Martin and members of the City Council, pursuant to the authority specified under Chapter 148 of the Acts of 1919 as amended by Chapter 427 of the Acts of 1983, it is with pleasure I am reappointing the following to new 5-year terms expiring March 21st, 2011, or until their successors are appointed and qualified. These are for appointments to the Lowell Memorial Auditorium Board of Trustees. John H. Costello Jr., 107 Clark Road; Ken Hughes, 31 Garden Road; Bunrith Latch, 48 19th Street; William Topier, 208 Nesmith Street. Confirmation by the City Council required for these appointments and is hereby requested. Be happy to answer any questions you have concerning these appointments. Very truly yours, John F. Cox, City Manager.
Move approval.
Motion to approve by Councilor Rita Mercier, seconded by Councilor Caulfield. Roll up. Councilor Armin Mercier.
I just have a question. I know that the statute requires appointments of these boards to be residents of Lowell. Is there a requirement on multiple boards sittings? In other words, can a person serve on more than one board?
Yes,
They can,
yes,
so there's
Councilor.
no prohibition on
No,
that at all?
that's right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Armin Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo?
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Okay, the next item is a vote authorizing the city manager on behalf of the city of Lowell to accept a gift of $121.96 from the Greater Merrimack Valley Convention and Visitors Bureau associated with the City Lights Parade, whereas the Greater Merrimack Valley Convention and Visitors Bureau wishes to donate a gift of $121.96 to be used for expense reimbursement associated with the City of Lights Parade, and whereas the City of Lowell desires to accept the gift of said $121.96 to be used for the City of Lights Parade, now therefore the city manager be and hereby is authorized in the name of the City of Lowell to accept a gift of $121.96 to be used for expense reimbursements associated with the City of Lights Parade pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A. Second reading by title, a vote authorizing the city manager on behalf of the City of Lowell to accept a gift of $121.96 from the Greater Merrimack Valley Convention and Visitors Bureau associated with the City of Lights Parade. Any questions? Roll call.
Counselor Elliott? Yes. Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Counselor Armin Mercia? Yes. Counselor Rita Mercia?
Yes.
Counselor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Ramirez?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Donahue?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Okay. The next item is a vote authorizing the city manager in conjunction with the City of Lowell's homeless service providers to apply, accept, and expend funds for a grant from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, Continuum of Care Grant, to be administered by the City of Lowell through its Division of Planning and Development, whereas the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development has funds available under Continuum of Care Grant program to renew funding for services in support of the homeless, and whereas the City of Lowell is desirous of applying for, accepting, and expending funds from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development Continuum of Care Grant Program to renew funding for services in support of the homeless. Now therefore be it voted by the City Council of the City of Lowell that the city manager, in conjunction with the City of Lowell's homeless service providers, be and hereby are authorized to apply, accept, and expend funds from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development Continuum of Care Grant to be administered by the City of Lowell through its Division of Planning and Development to renew funding to provide service in support of the homeless. Second reading by title, a vote authorizing the city manager in conjunction with the City of Lowell's homeless service providers to apply, accept, and expend funds from a grant from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development Continuum of Care Grant Program to be administered by the City of Lowell through the Division of Planning and Development. What is the wish of the council? Motion to approve, Councilor Milonazo.
I'll be happy to make that motion to approve. Just a question, this has been a very worthwhile program over the last several years. Do we know how much the grant may be this time around?
Through Mr. Mayor, over the last 7 years, Councilor, we received over $7.5 million from these grants. So I would say it would be in the same vicinity. This is a renewal grant, so unless those programs have been cut, we expect to do very well with it.
Okay, well, I'll make that motion. Thank
Okay,
you.
motion to approve by Councilor Milonazo, seconded by Councilor Broderick. Any further questions? Roll call.
Counselor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Counselor Armin Mercia?
Yes.
Counselor Rita Mercia?
Yes.
Counselor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Ramirez?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Donahue?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Okay, the next item is an order pursuant to Chapter 13 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Lowell concerning Section 13.6 entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations. Temporary traffic regulations are hereby implemented for a period of 60 days, whereas the City of Lowell desires to make temporary rules regarding traffic under the actual conditions for a period of 60 days, and whereas Chapter 13 of the Code of Ordinances, Section 13.6, entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations, authorizes the council to make temporary rules not to exceed 60 days. Now therefore be it ordered, adjudged, and decreed by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, effective upon passage and continuing for a period of 60 days thereafter, the following traffic regulation shall be implemented. Section 13-156, parking for a handicapped person at 19 Kinsman Street, westerly side, beginning at a point 50 feet northeast and northerly curb line of Floyd Street, running northeasterly a distance of 20 feet along said Kinsman Street. Second reading by title. In order pursuant to Chapter 13 of the Code of City Ordinances, City of Lowell, concerning Section 13.6, entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations. Temporary traffic regulations are hereby implemented for a period of 60 days. Roll call.
Counselor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Counselor Armin Mercia?
Yes.
Counselor Rita Mercia?
Yes.
Counselor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Ramirez?
Yes.
Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
Counselor Caulfield? Counselor Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilor
Thank you.
Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I waited till after this vote. It says effective upon passage, so I'm asking through you to the city manager, will the sign and the pole be there tomorrow?
First thing in the morning, Council.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilor Donahue.
thank you. On the same street, if I can, if there's no objection from my colleagues, can we get a report from the building commissioner? I believe it's on 83 Kinsman Street. There was a building permit issued. I got a call from a constituent who claims they're building on 1,400 square feet. Can we find out what the story is there? I think it's 83, Kinsman. I have it written down. I'll call you in the morning, TJ, with the exact address, but I'm pretty sure it's 83 Kinsman. It's a recent building.
Okay, I believe the next item is going to be withdrawn and I think entertained as part of a subcommittee report. So that brings us to a constable bond for John Sieverts, 400 Merrimack Lane, Drake, Mass. This is a letter addressed to the city clerk, Richard Johnson. Please find attached an application for constableship for the current term that began January 3rd, 2005 and terminates January 7, 2008. Submitted John Sieverts, 400 Merrimack Lane, Apartment 1, Drake, Mass.
Move approval.
Motion to approve by Councilor Mercier, Councilor Armin Mercier, seconded by Councilor Rita Mercier. Roll call.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Armin Mercier?
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercier?
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo?
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Okay, subcommittee reports. Councilor Milonazo.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last evening, the Economic Development Subcommittee met and went over the issue of the new parking garage on Middlesex Street, as was reported by the administration, which also was reported in tonight's paper. We had a bid opening last Wednesday, and unfortunately, the bids came in for about $5 million over what had been budgeted. We had actually budgeted, I believe it was $16.5 million, and the low bid came in at about $21.5 million. So we're about $5 million over budget. Unfortunately, we only had two bids come in, and we're now looking at alternatives as how to best address that. My colleagues last night, Councilor Donahue and Councilor Armin Mercier, along with Mayor Martin and Councilor Caulfield, raised a number of questions. We looked at a report from the administration as to alternatives, everything from scrapping the project, which is something we don't want to do and would not recommend to the council, to looking at ways to possibly either come up with an alternative funding, looking at possibly a public works economic development grant or other public funds that could be forthcoming, looking at the possibility of increasing the revenue by increasing the borrowing for this particular garage from the $16.5 million up to the $21.5 million. The added debt service would be about $272,000 per year, which we were told we could not afford based upon the current rate that we charge in the garage. So that really does not appear to be an alternative. But again, in an effort to keep moving the project forward, we've asked the administration to look at a number of alternatives and get back to the subcommittee within the next 30 days. The bids are good for 30 days, and hopefully we'll be able to come back to the subcommittee with a recommendation. At this time, and I'm sure that my colleagues would want to add something to my report, that we were disappointed. We were told it was a result of the cost of the precast concrete, the cost of fuel. Again, we were told by Parsons Brinckerhoff, again, a very good design firm, who actually had a cost estimator involved in the project, that they were very surprised by what had happened, and that if we didn't actually have really a 9 to 12 month anticipated build out for the precast concrete, we'd probably find ourselves in this position again. So again, we're not in a position to recommend to the council that we pay, I think it's $24,000 per space for this garage. So we are going back initially to the drawing board to try to come up with some alternatives. So again, as a report of progress, that was our recommendation, to ask the administration through the manager's office to come back to us with a report as to where we go from here.
Okay, Councilor Rita Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just concerned about the remark that says bids are good for 30 days. So if someone had a suggestion that we rebid the process, does that mean we have to wait till the 30 days are over?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't think so, Council. We're obviously trying to get this information together as soon as possible with alternatives, firm alternatives based upon questions asked last night back to the council. The question came up about the 30-day thing. Apparently, within the industry, it's quite common to go to the low bidder and seek a continuance on that 30 days. So we will have this together well before the 30 days.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manager.
Okay, Councilor Donahue?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the Chairman, Council Milanaza reported, I mean, it was kind of a shock, I'm sure, for everybody concerned to open these bids and see it over 30% above what the experts estimated this to be. And one of the, in addition to it being $24,000 a space, it also is costing out at $70 a square foot to build this garage. And as the consultant told us, this is the equivalent or in the price range of when you're building underground parking, not above ground parking. So for whatever reason, I mean, the only thing they can surmise is the general contractor costs that weren't part of the estimated were the precast concrete and transportation, but it still is extraordinary, and it just seems to be completely out of whack. It occurred to me after last night's meeting, this same company, Consigli Construction, is also building the university's garage, I understand. So I'm just curious what they are paying. I mean, that must be public record. I don't know, I mean, our bids are our bids, but I'm just kind of curious. Are they paying something this much? I don't know if Adam...
Yeah.
I don't know if Mr. Backey has any information, or if we can get that information.
Thank you, Councilor. Adam Bakey, Deputy Director of Planning and Development. It's our understanding that the bids for the UMass Lowell parking garage, which were opened in early December, were somewhere in the order of $18,000 per space. It is a different kind of building. It's a little bit different design to it, and they do not have the retail space that our building has. And the cost per space on our building does include the cost of building out all that retail space. So they're not necessarily apples to apples, but yeah, definitely it does.
Well, you'd expect ours to be a little more expensive because of the retail, but $6,000 a space times 900 spaces, I mean, that's a lot of money. So anyway, we, as Councilman Milanazo said, obviously the administration and DPD is going to go back to the drawing board, see what we can do, and I mean, we want to keep our commitment to build a garage, but at these costs, the ratepayers couldn't afford to. I mean, you're kind of biting off your nose to spite your face. You put a garage there, but you want the ratepayers to pay the freight, and it's going to be so expensive that the businesses would be complaining to us that thanks for the garage, but no one can afford to park there. So, and that's not anything that we want. So we would be going back to the drawing board, but. Thank you for the information on the university garage, because I was just curious, what a difference, a couple of months makes, in terms of opening bids, so.
Well, if I just may
Yes,
say,
Mr. Manager.
Mayor, the interesting about the retail space is if we took the retail space out, we're only going to save about $250,000. So that clearly doesn't make up the difference between the 18 and the 24. So you're right. I mean, it's just the timing of the thing, I guess.
Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Chairman Milanow indicated, I did attend the meeting last evening, and there were alternatives. Make a large parking lot and be 250 to 275 spaces, but then the $900,000 in design work, the $750,000 in eminent domain takings. We have $1,650,000 just tied up in that. The other alternative was to eliminate a floor. If you eliminate a floor, there's 200 parking spaces you can't rent or lease. It's a hard nut to swallow. It's a double-edged sword, and I agree that retail spaces are going to add to the parking garage. It's going to bring businesses there. It's very attractive. And we made a commitment to the business people in that neighborhood that we would build a garage, and I would still stand by that commitment. Is it going to be more costly? Yes. But I think we have to move forward and probably find ways and means of coming up with some revenue to reduce that cost. But as Councilor Armor was quoted last night, that the administration wants to build that garage, and so does the council. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Armin Mercia.
First of all, it was a great meeting, because what come out of that meeting are some ideas for the administration to consider on funding the debt service. There's been some misinformation today on the radio that I want to correct. First of all, it's $23,000 a space and not $30,000. Secondly, the debt service would not be paid by every taxpayer in the city of Lowell, as suggested, $1,000 per taxpayer. It would be paid by the revenues generated by the parking structures that we have in the city of Lowell. I think we're all committed to making sure that the jam plan works, and it does not work without a garage of this nature. And I think the subcommittee was very diligent in telling the administration, these are a couple of ideas that we'd like you to pursue. One of them is the possibility of maybe having the private sector build it and we would buy it, or having the private sector build it, we would lease it, or consider raising the parking revenues, not to the taxpayers, but to the users of the parking garages throughout the city. So it is now in the hands of the administration to come up with a way that is palatable to all of us, knowing full well that we don't want a parking spot there only. We want the garage. The garage is going to make sure, as a catalyst, that the jam plan will be successful. So I just wanted to make sure that the misinformation is corrected. This would not fall on all of the taxpayers in the city of Lowell, but would fall on the people who use the parking. And that secondly, there are ways and means of seeking federal funds, state funds to offset the shortfall. So the ball now is in the manager's court and the DPD's court to come up with an alternative to make this happen. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. I think a lot of points have been made that make a lot of sense, but I mean, it's such a wide gap that it seems that, you know, we have to scale back the project somehow. Mr. Manager, maybe this was mentioned last night. What is the cost of, I mean, do we use the $23,000 figure per space, or is it a cost per, I presume it's a cost per floor based upon the number of spaces? What is the savings?
The way they explained it last night was that they do it on a per space basis, and it's 24,000, whatever that number was. They said that when they were figuring the budget, the estimated budget for this project, they were using a number of 18,000 per space, hoping it could come in at 16,000 per space. It actually went to, was it 23 or 24? I forget the actual number, but it actually went to 23 or 24,000 per space based upon these numbers. Clearly, if you take off a floor, it's not that simple to do the math, because all of the equipment, all of the pilings, all of the construction it has, you still pay for that on the ground floor, the first floor, the second floor. So when you just lop off a floor, you can't just say, well, we're taking 20% less, and take 20% less off the price as well. But they do it on a per space basis.
I guess we're all concerned because it was just a short time ago that we increased the bond authorization another 1.9 million to cover. So we wouldn't have to take any design reductions and continue with the.
The original number for construction was 15.5 million. We upped it to 16.5 million, and the number came in at 21.5 million.
Well, we made a commitment not only to the businesses down there, but we do need parking if that area of the city is going to be developed, if we're going to generate the additional commercial revenue that we all spoke about, which is important to reduce or to at least offset some of the residential taxes. By the same token, we have to live within what we can afford, and we did just receive the revenue and expense report from the parking department, and it does generate a surplus, but I mean, we still have some other improvements that we're undertaking in the other garages. So, I'd be leery to. We clearly, in my opinion, can't spend an additional $5 million, and that's what the report of the subcommittee. But it seems that we're faced with the reality, and I know the chairman mentioned potential grants, but and I think that we should investigate them. But I think when we embarked on this, original proposal way back when, that wasn't an option. And that's, in fact, all the other garages in the city were built with federal funds.
State funds.
Well, state, and I think the A out of the lower logs had a UDAG. So I mean, but regardless, it wasn't. You know, it wasn't tax-paying money.
Yeah.
So I look forward to the report coming back. But it looks like we have to scale back somehow, somewhere. And unfortunately, we don't want to do it.
Yeah, we're looking at all the options, but we'll try to get that done quickly. We will get it done quickly.
Thank you.
Motion to accept the report as a report of progress by Councilor Armin Mercia, seconded by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The motion is adopted. Further subcommittee reports. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This evening we had a zoning subcommittee meeting at 4:30. It was a 2-hour meeting, so I'll try and keep it less than that on the report. It was a very spirited discussion, and I want to thank DPD, the manager's office, the neighborhood groups, and the councilors that were in attendance and gave some valuable input. We also had the ZBA members and the planning board members to help out as well. We took up a number of issues. The first issue was as we talked about, a sign that would be a requirement for anybody getting a building permit. They came back, we had a draft of the ordinance on posting notices, and it essentially, hopefully all the councilors have a copy of this, but it essentially requires a sign to be posted under the regulations when there's a project requiring a special permit or site plan review with the Lowell Planning Board, projects requiring a special permit or variance from the ZBA, projects involving new construction or a change in use that must go before the Lowell Historic Board, and projects undergoing a full subdivision review from the Lowell Planning Board, provided that such subdivision approval was granted within the past 3 years. It is designed to be user-friendly. People that are changing their roof or the exterior of their home are not required to do this, and they're going to be, Joe Guthrie's office is not going to be manufacturing or involved in the signs. The people that apply for the permits are going to be responsible for getting their own. We should have, for next Tuesday night, an approved, basically the law department has to have final say on the sign itself. The board recommended unanimously to approve it. In addition, I neglected to mention the sign is going to be 48 inches by 72 inches, which is 4 by 6 feet. So we decided to keep it at the standard black on white, that we wouldn't need to go with a pink or a fluorescent orange, because the sign's going to be large enough as it is. And the subcommittee recommended approval of the drafted ordinance pending approval from the law department. I believe we're going to need to have another subcommittee meeting maybe to recommend final approval. I guess we can.
So you want to give the whole report, or you want to take these up?
Yeah,
up
I'll
separately?
finish the report. But the second issue we took up was the moratorium that we withdrew from the vote tonight. And basically, unanimously, we recommended denying or not voting or supporting a moratorium on the TMF zoning, and instead recommend adopting changes A through G to the zoning code, which in a 2-to-1 vote, Councilor Milanazzo and myself voting for, and Councilor Elliott voting against adopting it only for the TTF and TMF, which increases the lot area per dwelling from 3,000 to 4,000 in the TTF, and in the TMF, which was our primary concern for tonight's meeting, from 2,500 to 4,000. It also increases the usable open space per unit in the TTF from 250 square feet to 500, and from the TMF from 250 to 500 as well. Councilor Milanazzo made a motion to approve the zoning, the increase in lot area per dwelling, and also to not accept or recommend approving the TMU, UMF, and UMU proposed changes in lot area per dwelling unit, and instead adopted or asked the DPD to come back with a change in the, what triggers a site plan and special permit. It currently, 4 units or more triggers a special permit, which is the key to get some control on these and on the design review. The DPD is going to come back with more recommendations. This recommendation was for just dealing with the density. The further and more complicated changes are going to be in the design review process in terms of decreasing density, maybe one goal we have, but the feeling from DPD and some of the councils is that the design review is just as important to make sure that we have good building. Just increasing or decreasing the density is not necessarily going to achieve that. So that's going to take, they estimate, maybe 6 months. So in the interim, to stop, hopefully, what we've been receiving complaints on, we recommend the increase from lot area per dwelling unit on the TTF, which is the traditional two-family, and the TMF, which is the traditional multifamily, and at the same time bringing in a trigger that would, a mechanism that would trigger the special permit and site plan review for any addition of 2 or more units in any of these districts. So that was that came through again with a 2-to-1 vote. Councilor Elliott will speak on his feelings, but he wanted to include the TMU, UMF, and UMU in the lot area per dwelling unit increase as well. And finally, we started to address the special permit. There was a motion by Councilor Caulfield to send the special permit back to the ZBA, and after some discussion, it was determined that that also would be a lengthy process. Having it with the planning board now for the particular concerns that the council has provides for some, again, design review and some input from the DPD that the ZBA does not get because they do not deal with the DPD. So some of the feelings were that we want to take our time, and if we're going to transfer it, make sure we transfer these safeguards and this input for the design review aspect from DPD. That was unanimous to continue that and continue working on that. The last and, again, divided issue was to make a recommendation that DPD come back with in conjunction with the law department, a grandfather clause for the site plan and special permits that have been approved under these zones that we discussed tonight that basically might have to come back in, or their site, they wouldn't be allowed under the newer requirements. Councilor Elliott thought that we should not necessarily do that. The objective was to curtail it. Councilor Milanazzo and I thought that they already went through the process and that they should be allowed to continue their build out. In an effort to compromise, what DPD is going to put together a change and also a list of the projects that were approved either at the site plan or special permit level that might be affected by this before it comes up for a vote, and the council can decide if they want to implement a local, this would be a local ordinance. The state is much less strict on this matter, and this is where we need our law department to weigh in and see how much more latitude the city can give in terms of grandfathering. Assuming we can do it, it will be brought in with a list of possibly affected developments and brought for a vote.
Okay.
I believe that's it. 2 hours and
Okay.
10 minutes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Broderick. Councilor Elliott, do you want to be heard on?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The chairman really did a good job in explaining the issue, but I'd wanted to explain why I dissented, why I didn't agree with it. And as I said in the subcommittee, this is my third time at trying to change the zoning code and improve it. And the recommendation that I voted against was not to increase the square foot size in the TTF, TMF, TMU, but planning development came to the meeting and indicated, they came to the meeting and saying, look, there are 3 other zones that could, and I don't want to use the wrong word, but probably present some of the same issues that we faced in the TTF and the TMF, the twin two family, and the TMF zone, multifamily. So my position always was that we need to increase it. You know, the first time around we had, you know, multifamily going up on Hildreth Street and primarily Hildreth Street. There were a number of them, but not only there, throughout the city. And that's when we did convene the zoning and say, look, we have to revamp the entire code. Then we just, you know, we did that and we came back with the second round when we had developments on Wright Street and Burbeck's and Beach Street and other areas that. So my position was, if we're going to do this the third time, let's increase the lot sizes in all of these zones that could have a potential problem, or, you know, not really address the zoning issues that we intended to do. So I support increasing the lot sizes in TF, MU, and MU to 4,000. That's a good thing. I just think we needed to take another step. I don't want to have to come back to the drawing board again when another project does surface. And we did get a copy of the map at the meeting, and I had a chance to look. There are some zones that, and the square foot requirements are 1,000 per unit. Now, I'm just, for consistency's sake, I didn't think it was a good idea when we were talking about projects, you know, in the past, whether it was Burbeck's or the zoning in the acre. I'll say then and I say now, I think that the density is too tight. So here's a opportunity for us to increase them, and that's why I voted the way that I did. Not that I'm against increasing the lot size. I figured while we're here, while we're at the drawing board, let's do it. That's what I hear from people. That's what you hear in the neighborhoods. That's what we heard during the campaign, and I think that we should be doing it, including the increased open space. And what the next round of, which I did support, the next round of zoning changes increasing dramatically the parking requirements in all these zones. So that's the reason why I voted against it, and I think that and I stand by that. I think that we should go from 1,000 to 2,000. And not that I'm against site plan review or the special permit, and I know that still has to be part of it, but those just don't seem to provide the reassurances that I think we need to put in this code to prevent the crafty developers from finding a way. And I see that, you know, developers went from, and maybe it's a coincidence, but from putting too many units in the TF, and then we had what Councilor Caulfield brought up in Westford Street, the multifamily. And are they going to go to the TMU and then the UMF and UMU? I happen to think so. So that was the reason why I voted the way that I did. I understand some projects have already been approved by either the ZBA or the planning board, and I'm not trying to, you know, change the rules as was mentioned in the subcommittee. They went through the process. However, we don't even know what they are. You know, there's 5 or 6 projects that I wanted to see, what are they? And are they projects that we really don't want? And which would be the reason why we're changing this zone again, these zones, increasing the lot size, increasing the parking requirements. Maybe they're fine. One gentleman spoke, he's doing a project, I think it was on Acton Street, where he's putting a 2-family on 13,000 square feet. That seems to be within the spirit of what we're trying to do here. But planning development didn't know, so I didn't want to continue to move forward blindly, so to speak, without knowing what we're voting on. So, and maybe they're all fine projects, and we're going to get that information in the next week. But considering the number of issues and problems that we've had that we're trying to address, I thought it would be more cautious to wait, see what those projects are, and then grandfather them. I know there's a project, the Alternative House and the Red Cross. We're not trying to stop those projects. It's all the other projects in the neighborhood that people are upset about. So that was my position and why I voted against the proposals. I think we have a lot of work ahead of us. We're moving from phase 1, as was discussed in the subcommittee, from increasing requirements, lot requirements. There's still an opportunity for developers to increase the lot size and still put up, structures that are not, consistent with the neighborhood character. So that's the next phase, and it's going to take some time. I didn't think, as just one member and the subcommittee sort of withdrew the idea of the moratorium, I think it does send a message where we are moving forward in the city, that we don't want to stop all the growth. And even if it's just in one zone, we just want better growth. And my last point was, I think that we have developed a lot in the city. I think we're, almost, we don't want to develop every square foot. And again, which was another reason why I thought that we should just go with all of these zones while we're at it again, rather than have another one, quote unquote, slip through the cracks. Let's do it now. And planning development, quite frankly, came in with the recommendation, and we sent them out to do a job. They came back and told us what we should do, and I agreed with it. But that doesn't mean I don't agree with increasing these other requirements. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Milanazzo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a work in process, and I certainly appreciate my colleagues and all the hard work that they have put into it, along with the administration through the Planning and Development Office. I ended up supporting an amended recommendation, if you will, from the Planning and Development Office. I was certainly interested in both the TTF zones and the TMF zones, and when I was told that, based upon the Planning and Development's research, that by amending the TMF zone, 150 lots in the city would be impacted, and by increasing the dimensional requirements, 2/3 or 100, if you will, would no longer be developable. So, I think that is a big step forward if this change does get implemented. I can understand Councilor Elliott's position, and he's been consistent right along that we may in fact be overbuilding in some of these neighborhoods. But if you look at the U zone, the multifamily zones, or the UMF zones, they are traditionally more dense than the TTF or the TMF zone. But again, I'd be open to further discussion relative to those further recommendations. I think the idea of having the site plan review on the special permit, for 2 units or more for site plan review and special permit, I think that's a good idea. And I think as we go forward with the recommendations that we did make with the parking requirements and the other dimensional requirements, I do think we continue to improve the zoning code. So again, we'll have some, through the law department and ordinance back before the council probably in the next week to 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Anybody else?
Just,
Councilor Caulfield.
Just very briefly, Mr. Mayor, I was extremely pleased with the subcommittee's performance this evening, along with DPD, the manager, everyone in attendance, and I think a lot was accomplished this evening, and I can see where Councilor Elliott is coming from, but I would certainly support a half a loaf rather than nothing, and I'm very happy with the subcommittee. They increased, through the DPD's recommendation, the open space from 250 square feet to 500 square feet. Had this zoning been in place, the 2 houses on Worcester Street could not have been built. Only 1 house could have been built. And Commissioner Guthrie indicated to me last week, maybe we can prevent houses being stacked, a house being built behind one another. Clean, aesthetic development. And I think the meeting tonight was excellent. It was debated, hotly debated, but that's good. That's good. And many of the residents of the city got involved, some developers got involved, and I think everyone did a great job. And I think this is going to at least get us off the dime and address some serious issues that are going on throughout the city, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Donahue?
Thank you. I was present for a portion of the discussion about the grandfathering or projects that have gone through the process. In advance of the vote, can we get a report from the appropriate departments, be it planning boards, DPD, as far as how many there are and what they are? In other words, before we vote on that issue, should they be grandfathered because they've gone through the process? Is it 1, probably 2, 3? We know there's at least a couple because people were there in that situation, but are there hundreds? Are there dozens? So if we can get an idea before we vote, And what are they? So for example, maybe alternative house is a good project, but maybe there's, a stinker, that maybe, so we should know, so if we can get that information, if it's readily available before whatever vote we take on that.
DPD thought there was 6 or 7 projects, and
That's
that's what they thought, and then they said they'll get a list for next week.
If we can get a list and a
Yes,
description of what they are, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, so the recommendation of the subcommittee then is to have the law department proceed with the votes in accordance with the motions that you voted at the subcommittee meeting, and bring those back for consideration by the council at the next meeting if possible, at which case they'd have to be then sent to a public hearing for advertisement.
Correct.
Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
So is there, Councilor Armin Mercier?
It would have to be sent to the planning board, right?
Right, a public hearing, either
then
joint
come
hearing
back.
with the planning board or
And
separate.
then a public hearing, okay.
Right. Is there a request for a roll call vote on the recommendation of the subcommittee? So all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The subcommittee recommendation is adopted. Further subcommittee reports? Okay. Under petitions, we have one petition requesting a handicap parking sign, Helen Corner, 19 Crowley Street, to be referred to the traffic engineer. We have...
This one has been requested withdraw.
Okay, we have another petition from Attorney Monahan and Patarello, which is requested to be withdrawn. Is that correct? It's a motion to allow the withdrawal
So move.
by Councilor Armin Mercier, seconded by Councilor Caulfield. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? That petition's withdrawn. And we have 2 claims, one for property damage, one for personal injury. Motion to refer to the Law Department by Councilor Milanazzo, seconded by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Those claims are referred to the Law Department. Under the motions, first motion is from Councilor Elliott. The City Council requests the City Manager and Wastewater Treatment District to eliminate odor control study to fix, or to initiate an odor control study to fix the odor problem at the wastewater facility, seconded by Councilor Rita Mercier. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know this is a long-standing problem. I'm sure every one of my colleagues have filed a motion and received concerns and complaints. I know there's money in the budget for this, and I guess I'd like to get a little bit of a time frame when we're going to do this. I know people's windows are shut right now, and it's not that much of a concern, but the summer coming, and rightfully so, the complaints and concerns are going to surface. So trying to get ahead of the issue. I know Mr. Mark Young is aware of this, but I thought it was important to bring it forward, and it's a big problem, and it needs to be addressed. So I don't know if you can elaborate anything more, Mr. Manager, but I think it's time that we really address this problem. And I was sitting watching, I toured the plan, and I was watching I don't know if it's a prevailing wind or not, but it seems to go, right into the Belvedere section of the city, and that's where a lot of the complaints come. So, and I know it's a complaint and it's a costly problem, but I think we need to address it, appropriate money to do it. So.
Through Mr. Mayor, briefly, we'll get you a full report. Mark Young and I have talked about this a lot over the years. Apparently, when they built the plant, they spent no money for odor control, which, the plant's been there a long time. But so obviously, to try to correct that problem is going to be expensive, but we are looking at and continue to look at ways to do that. But I'll get you a full report. I know Mark has been working on it lately, so hopefully there'll be some new things in there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything further on that motion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion is adopted. There's a request to take Councilor Armin Mercier's motion out of sequence and take that next. Is there any objection to that?
So move.
Okay, we'll take that one next.
I think you have it there, don't you?
I have Broderick's motion.
Which one are you looking for?
Okay, next motion by Councilor Armin Mercier requests the City Council authorize the City Manager to resume negotiations with Mr. Lechulis and his representatives relative to his property in the Hamilton Canal District, seconded by Councilor Caulfield. Councilor Armin Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of the motion is I think there is a misconception that the vote of this council that was taken previously to go for eminent domain and adverse position may have suggested that negotiations with Chula should be curtailed. The purpose of this motion is to make sure that the manager is made aware of this council that continued negotiations should take place in the event that something can be brought to us in a more favorable light than was. Now, I have no knowledge of any possibilities of things changing, but I think that we should continue to negotiate up till the point in time when a motion is brought forward to go for eminent domain, just in the event that based on what's happened with the garage, the cost of the garage, and also the recent letter we received from Mr. Lachulis' lawyer, that maybe there's room here to negotiate a settlement that would be favorable to the city and prevent to some degree, if negotiations are successful, and although there's a short period of time here, to prevent the adverse taking by eminent domain. I don't suggest that this motion is to prevent that. I'm just saying that I think that the manager should get a hold of Mr. Lachulis' attorney and continue and resume negotiations if indeed there's a possibility that Mr. Lachulis and his attorney is willing to negotiate. Clearly, the deal that was negotiated was not acceptable to the council. It's a majority. I accept that, the majority rules. But maybe there can be some further negotiations that would be more favorable for the city that we could be considering. The only purpose behind this motion is to make sure that the manager is aware that this council absolutely authorizes him to continue negotiations in spite of where we're heading. And that's the only purpose for the motion.
Okay, Councilor Broderick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a good motion. I was under the impression that we were going to continue negotiations, and I think that we ought to not stop when we take it, but continue all the way up and through appeal. I mean, many of these types of cases are settled on the courtroom steps, as we all know, and I think that this maybe just can maybe escalate the negotiations and get things moving a little bit more quickly. But I definitely think that Mr. Manager, that you ought to continue to try and resolve the issue, and in the meantime, we move forward. Thank you.
If I may, clearly, I am open to further negotiations with Mr. Sophocles, and we chatted briefly prior to that letter that he sent out. Had some disagreement about that, but clearly, it's open for further negotiation, and I think he's aware of that as clearly I am. I mean, but nothing has been brought forth at this point.
Okay, Councilor Donahue?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was my understanding when we had the discussions in the past that I think the council expected, as in any case, that negotiations would continue if they seem useful, even if cases begun in the land court. I mean, that negotiations continue. There's always room for negotiation. The only caveat I have is that I wouldn't want any vote, and so I don't have any problem with it because I thought that's what we were doing, but by the same token, I wouldn't want to have any misunderstanding that a vote in support of continued negotiations is in any way giving any kind of credence to that ridiculous letter of, saying the property's worth $20 million. I mean, ordinarily, we'd been in negotiations with Mr. Lachulis for, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years or so, and normally, the parties get closer. And in this case, it seems like we went the wrong direction. I mean, we had appraisals that said the property's worth, 1.7 million, and, they think it's worth whatever it's worth, but, so it seems like we're going in the wrong direction. But, sometimes you have to just say, look, we are so far apart, there's just no way this is going to come together. I think we add to that the difficulty that we're now facing with the garage, because that seemed to be a component of Mr. Lachulis' demand is 300 spaces in the garage. Now we have a situation that, we may not even be able to build, and the costs have escalated so dramatically that changes the dynamics, entirely. So anyway, that said, I certainly don't have a problem as long as it's understood that, I believe that we have waited and looked for a resolution. It doesn't seem to be at hand, And that's the main reason why, I supported the motion to prepare the land taking and that we proceed that way because, time is money in this situation. And so, but that doesn't foreclose continued negotiations. I would say good luck because, it doesn't seem there's any closing of the gap, but not from that letter anyway.
Oh, I mean, just sort of, my position is clear. Clearly, DPD is getting ready the appraisals for, I think, April 4th meeting. So I expect the vote to be of eminent domain, and that's clearly what we expect. If something happens in the meantime, that's not going to stop that. The negotiation will continue, and that vote will go forth. That's my understanding of what we're going to do.
Okay, Councilor Milonazo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll support the motion based upon the fact that I believe it's being brought forward in the spirit that there may have been, and I'm not sure there was, but there may have been a misunderstanding with the manager that he was to continue negotiating with Mr. Lachoulis. Again, as has been stated here, we can negotiate right up to the day that we, vote or not vote. But I guess I do have a question for the solicitor. Is this in any way impact, I don't think it would, but does this vote in any way impact or slow down the process that's happening vis-a-vis the taking?
Not at all, and it's similar to what a motion that you had made a ways back, which was to start the process rolling and then to keep it going, and in the event that negotiations failed, we at least would be in a position to do the taking. And by the same token, even once we do the taking, as Councilor Broderick indicated, negotiations should and would presumably continue to try to resolve the matter short of the final step of actual litigation.
Okay, anything else? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Any opposed? The motion is adopted. Next motion is by Councilor Broderick. City Council requests the city manager retain expert defense counsel to act on the city's behalf in the Lachoulis property eminent domain taking. Seconded by Councilor Donahue. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I'd like to state this doesn't have any reflection on Madam Solicitor. We went to law school together, and I have full faith in your abilities. This really was kind of spurred by the letter we did receive in some of the statements that were made in it, and also in a couple of the reports we received from the Solicitor's office on caseload. We've got the Stocklosa School. The Solicitor's office has to handle everything legal that deals with the city, and I think that this is, when we get a letter stating that the case may be worth, the claim may be worth $18 to $20 million, that considering the ramifications, if it ends up that way, that we need to take every precaution we can, which in my eyes is hire an expert. We have expert appraisers, and I think that we need to get expert counsel on board at the beginning, and I made the motion now. We obviously haven't taken a vote whether to take it or not, but to explore the possibility. Mr. Manager, I'm sure you're aware of the who's who in that line of in that field, and I think we need to get him on board. Half of the case is preparation, early preparation, posturing the case for litigation, and I don't want to see the city miss that opportunity. And I just think that the solicitor's office could use some assistance. Obviously, whoever, if it is brought to us and money's appropriated, they would have to work with the solicitor's office and in conjunction with. I just think that the amount of money that's potentially at stake here, or claimed to be at stake, warrants going out and hiring an expert. I know that if it was my particular personal case, I would want someone that does that specifically legally. So that was the intent of the motion. Madam Solicitor, I hope sincerely that there's no offense to your position or your department. I just think that this is going to be a very protracted and time-consuming case, and that we need to prepare for it right from the beginning and free up our solicitor.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Donahue?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the motion. I guess one question I have is perhaps the same council should represent the city in all of the land takings. There were, what are there, 3 or 4 land takings, not just Lachulis, but the others. It would seem that that would make some sense. I mean, obviously, there will be cost associated, but this is an expensive project down there, and I think, you know, juggling all these cases is going to be time-consuming and, you know, worth the investment from the city's perspective. So I support the motion. To the maker of the motion, I don't know whether we can get information or a recommendation as far as whether that same council could handle the other. Are there 2 others right now or 3 others besides Lachulis? 3 other? Okay, so, you know, and whether or not we can get a report that same expert council should handle all of those cases in the Hamilton Canal.
I'd move to amend for that.
Okay. Motion to amend the motion by the maker of the motion, seconded by Councilor Donahue. All in favor of the amendment, say aye. That doesn't necessarily mean approval of the motion. Still on the motion, Councilor Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Madam Solicitor, I'm just curious, how many attorneys are currently in your office?
Including myself, there are 4 full-time attorneys and 3 part-time attorneys. And we have one attorney, we had a full-time position that is vacant.
Right. And how many are currently working on the current eminent domain proceedings that Councilor Donahue alluded to?
I believe just me, for now. Usually, I mean, whenever we have something going to trial and gearing up in that fashion, and we start going through the discovery phase, we'll have 2 attorneys assigned. But at this stage, where it was negotiations, I was the person assisting the manager in those negotiations.
Tell me, is the office broken down into areas of litigation, like a couple of folks on land takings, a couple of folks on the municipal, on the civil, or is it just as the material comes in, everybody gets handed?
Yeah, well, there is some sort of rhyme and reason to how people get assigned cases, but by the same token, because we do literally everything and because we are a relatively small number of attorneys, it has always been the history of that office to have everybody fully capable as possible of handling a number of different things, whether it be zoning, civil rights. And so the goal is that we are always at a point where somebody is ready to step in. And, you know, the reality is that you are oftentimes handling some particular thing, perhaps for the first time, but.
Right. Let me ask you, I thought that the council in the past had voted to terminate the part-time attorneys for the solicitor's office. Am I inaccurate on that, or?
There were steps taken to ensure that the attorneys that were in the office were there full-time, and by and large, that has in fact occurred because of retirements and because of the extensive knowledge that both attorneys Dave Fenton and Tom Sweeney bring to the city, despite the fact that they cannot by law work full-time, and also despite the fact that actually, for example, Tom Sweeney and Dave Fenton both far exceed the hours that they actually get paid. They are there on a part-time basis, and I would suggest that it is well worth our advantage of having them there. And there was one other attorney who had been full-time and for a couple of reasons had received permission from the manager to have a part-time schedule for the time being.
I asked because it just seems like you're kind of short-staffed. Based on the litigation list that I saw and what I see coming down the pipe, I sympathize with the amount of work ahead of you. However, I am reassured in having Tom Sweeney there, that's for certain. But I support the motion 100%, and I hope that that council can take on all of the eminent domain properties that are going to be in litigation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In all due respect to my colleagues, I am not going to support the motion. What is the cost associated with bringing on an expert attorney in this field? I don't know. None of us know. I have full confidence in our law department with Christine O'Connor. Tom Sweeney is one of the finest municipal attorneys any community could have serving them. So I can't support the motion. What is the cost? $500,000? $600,000? I don't know. None of us know. So I can't support the motion.
Councilor Armin Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, as well-intended this motion can be, I personally think it's premature. I think when you start talking about expert legal counsel on a matter that's yet to be defended or supported or whatever the case may be, the billable hours start the minute that person or persons are hired. I really think it's premature. I think that if someone could assure me that the expert counsel that would represent the city on these matters was Tom Sweeney, I'd feel differently. But we do have some experts in the law department. And I think if the matter comes to a position where they believe that they need assistance or that expert counsel is required, I think it would behoove them to come to us and say so. I just think that as well-intended as the motion is, I think it's premature, and although I could support this in the future, if there could be documentation that it's required at some point in time, I can't support it now because I think that those billable hours will start the minute we hire this person, and that could be a considerable amount of money that maybe we won't have to spend based on the law department that we have. So I can't support it at this time. I think it's a well-intended motion, but I think it's premature.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Rita Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think with this particular case, Olachulis is very critical. As with any form of litigation that comes before the city is critical, and I want expert people doing the job. And I am highly confident that we have that expertise in our law department. I'm not supporting this either. I think that letter probably scared people to know that down the road there will be probably that court case that says we didn't get fair amount of money, and I know that everybody's looking to correct things, but I'm not supporting it. I think and I know that it's not the intention of the maker of the motion that there isn't expertise in the office, but I don't think that we have the money to do that. I think that we do have people in place that know the law and know just what they're doing.
Thank you. Councilor Milonazo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm actually going to support the motion based upon the fact that it's my understanding that the law department has done this before in other cases, not necessarily for eminent domain cases, but where there's been an issue where they need an expert counsel and an expert attorney has been brought in, or an expert witness has been brought in. So it's not something that I think is actually new to, unless I'm wrong, but I don't think it's something that's actually new to the law department. Again, I would, request.
I mean, there have been occasions, they've been very rare. They haven't been for this particular field, but obviously this is a specialized area. It's one that traditionally had been covered by the law department. The areas in which we had gotten outside counsel in the 12 years that I've been here, there's really, I think, a couple that I can think of. One had to do with a trash transfer station, and in that case it was absolutely necessary, and we had expert counsel in that, and we had one other attempt at it, but that was about it that I can remember.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Donahue?
Just a couple of comments. One is, I don't think this is premature. We know we are going to be doing eminent domain with at least 3 landowners down there anyway, and maybe 4. So I don't think it's premature. This is one of the biggest development projects in the history of the city of Lowell. It's 16 acres in the central district. There are millions and millions of dollars at stake here. I don't think it is extravagant to say, let's hire experts. I have sat in subcommittee meetings and heard over and over and over again about how this landowner has an expert, that landowner has the best attorney in eminent domain taking. And I don't mean from a fear factor, but in terms of reports and discussions that have happened at subcommittee. There are indeed attorneys who specialize in eminent domain. Make no mistake about it. That's their business. They know this cold, inside and out. You don't hire an expert attorney when the case is ready to be called for trial the next day. You're not going to get them at that point. They don't want to pick up a case at that point. You would hire them at the outset of a case to properly prepare the case. So, would there be cost involved? Yes, but the costs are there. I mean, this is a huge project, and I think there's no room for error on this project, quite frankly. And this is not said in any way to criticize the law department. I think they do an extraordinary job with the number of cases, about 150 active litigation cases or more, we were told recently, of every kind or nature. I mean, it's a general law practice when it all comes down to it. This is specialized, and so I certainly support the motion. I think it's critical. This isn't a criticism, a critique. It's merely recognizing the importance and saying, let's do this. Now, the costs may vary because maybe some of these cases do get settled, and therefore it may vary. But at least with a few of them, we're pretty certain they're not going to settle. I mean, that's what we were told, and that's why we're proceeding with eminent domain. So that's why I support the motion.
Councilor Elliott, did you want to be heard?
Thank you. I would like to know what the cost is when Councilor Broderick, we spoke about it last week. I thought it was a good idea to bring somebody on that is an expert, but I really would like to know what the cost is. I think that's important before we get into the process. And maybe there isn't a dollar figure that you can put on it, but, and where's the money going to come from, I guess, would be the question. I mean, there's not a line item in the budget, and I mean, who's going to do the hiring? How are we going to make the selection? Who's going to make the selection? So I guess I have a lot of answers or questions. How do we get from A to B? I understand it's an important case, and I also had mentioned to him, Councilor Broderick, that why don't we have one solicitor designated for this particular purpose? I don't know a lot about the specialties in law, and I don't discount the fact that maybe there are individuals that specialize in this. However, I'm hearing that maybe there's a potential to settle, and I voted for the eminent domain because I think it is going to be a difficult case. I think that the individual is a businessman, and he's been dealing with these issues for a while. However, I thought that we could just, I'm sorry, Mr. Manager, I'm rambling here. I thought that we could, designate maybe a Tom Sweeney, who I happen to think is one of the better lawyers, and maybe he doesn't want this, but, why can't we look at that?
He wants to stay that way.
Yeah, he wants to stay
Tommy
part-time.
fall off his couch at home.
But I thought that was a good idea, have someone specialize on it, and do we have to hire, and how much would it be? Is it 50,000, 100, 200, and how are we going to pay for it?
If I can take a
Mr.
stab
Manager.
at that. First of all, I and Chris clearly understand Council Broderick's statements and other council statements that this is clearly not aimed at the law department. We clearly don't think that it is, obviously. And I'm sure Chris, if she weren't the consummate professional that she is, would sit here and say, I'd love the help. I'd love the help. It's going to be a long, complicated case, no question about it, if it goes the whole route. What the price will be, I don't think there's any way of telling. Clearly, we don't have any money budgeted for it. That's clear. Clearly, we could, if the council wanted us to, we could. I don't even know how you try to get your arms around this type of a thing. I mean, because there's no question, there's no way of knowing as we sit here today or tomorrow or next week, how many hours would be involved in this type of a thing, how much time would be involved. I'm sure it would be a big number. It's a number we clearly don't have budgeted, but, you know, what we could do if the council wanted, we could certainly look at that and try to make a stab at it. But it would be an estimate. I mean, there is absolutely no way. I know the council is, everybody on this council would agree to tell you with any degree of certainty that LaChulis and Saab and the other gentleman, you know, to hire expert counsel for those three matters would be, if they went the full route, would be this number, that number. It would just be, I think a guess. I don't think there's any way of having any educated guess at that. But if that's what you wanted us to do, we'd be happy to take a look at it. But I think it would be just a guess and no more than that.
Well, I mean, you know, these individuals that are experts, they must have some idea how many hours it takes to settle this case. And I know there are different variables and you can't nail it down to a dollar figure, but I mean, we have some lawyers here. If you go and ask how much a real estate is, and I know
1, 2, 3, 4,
you know how much it costs to do
5
this, or
different,
how much is this case, and maybe they may vary.
6.
But I would like to know and have some idea before we go into this, you know, what we're faced with, and that doesn't minimize the importance of it either.
No, clearly. I mean, that's something we could try to put together if the council want us to.
Solicitor's raising her hand.
I was just going to add to that what we could do is, once we get a sense of the individuals that we might be looking at for this kind of a task, obviously the council could easily be provided with, for starters, an hourly rate, not just for the attorney, but also for whatever support staff to help reduce some of those costs, because certain things wouldn't need to be done by whoever would be lead counsel in the case. So it would be a breakdown of costs associated with that. And the reason it's so difficult to give an estimate is that, again, even going forward with the eminent domain, in the event that it's settled, obviously that would be a much less expensive endeavor than should it go all the way to trial. If you have a full-scale trial on something, the costs go up astronomically. And so we could give the council a sense as to, you know, going through these different stages of a case like this, a ballpark estimate of, through the discovery phase, how much it would be, and right up through a trial phase, as well as, you know, a potential appeal phase.
Well, I don't know if the maker of the motion would object to at least getting some more information before we, you know, take this vote, or maybe.
Well, Councilor Broderick's had his hand up for a while
Okay.
here, so
Sorry.
why don't we recognize him? Councilor Broderick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. I think that at this time I can certainly amend it for a second time to, I think we need more information. I probably should have put down instead of retain, because I don't think we're at a point where we can necessarily say we can afford it, we want, you know, and how we're going to pay for it. But I think we have to at least explore it. And Mr. Manager, maybe if you could get some names and some, and I know you ask an attorney how much a case costs, and they say how high is high. It depends how much work they have to do, how long the case goes on, appeal process, and so on. Now, my concern is that the solicitor's office is jammed, and every zoning subcommittee we have, we throw 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 more things at her office, and this is an incredibly important case. It's specifically LaChulis, but the whole area down there with McLaughlin and Saab, that I don't particularly, myself speaking as an attorney, I don't want to see the case handled in a reactionary manner from the outset, because we just have limited man hours. Not because we don't have the quality of staffing or attorneys, but just, quite frankly, we file suit to get the clock going, and there's other things, as most attorneys know, that can, better posturing also put you in a better position to settle the case. And my concern is that we want to make sure we have the best position we can initially at the outset to settle the case, because my hope is that we can settle the case. I'm not looking to hear a gavel bang in 2 or 3 years and find out how much we lost. I'd like to see us be able to set this thing up for a reasonable settlement, and I think that it's important to get an attorney involved at the outset, not after suit is filed, but before anything is done to help posture the case. And this, anybody can go online that has the internet, and you can check eminent domain attorneys in Massachusetts. And this is a very specialized field that I think that we absolutely, it's going to be critical to get someone on board. I understand it's going to cost money. That's something that we can hopefully work out and debate and come together on, but that was the intent of the motion. I also know that the manager's not going to come back next week with a contract for us with the law firm, but at least to explore it, get the feelers out there and see what kind of expense and hourly and so on, how it all would work.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
is that a motion in substitution for the manager in the law department to investigate this possibility, report back to the council?
Yes, report back.
Then we would take a vote on the initial cost and whatever.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so motion in substitution by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Elliott. Councilor Milonazo.
Thank you. Under the heading, a strong offense is a good defense, or vice versa, or whatever. If we pick six of the best eminent domain firms in Boston or the greater Boston area, and we bring them in for an interview, are they then ineligible to represent the other side? Do you know?
Well, I mean, at this stage of the game, I think.
I'm not saying at this stage of the game. As we go down the road and say we decide based upon a report from the law
Oh,
department.
you mean tying them up, sort of
Correct.
speak?
Right.
Potentially, it depends. It depends on the level of conversations that we would have with them, but yeah, that would be a potential. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a substituted motion on the floor. Is a request for a roll call on that motion? Okay, so all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion as substituted is approved. The next motion is by Councilor Milonazo. The City Council requests the City Manager have the LRTA appropriately honor former Executive Director Robert C. McGuire, seconded by Councilor Armin Mercier. Councilor Milonazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, through you to the manager, I hope I'm not overreaching here, because I know that this is obviously in the purview of the board at the LRTA, but I think based upon the fact that Bob McGuire served there for 10 years as executive director, and he served as a city council for a number of years, 2 terms as mayor, I would like if my colleagues would support this motion to just have you, Mr. Manager, ask that the LRTA do an appropriate, in some way, honor the former executive director. I know years ago, working with Bob McGuire on the initial expansion of the garage, we actually bought, through the Lowell plan, we bought the Commodore Club. We land banked it for a period of time and built that garage, working with, I believe, you may have been state representative at the time, working and bringing some monies into that project. So, again, I just think it would be appropriate if the LRTA board could see their way to do something for former director McGuire.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, I've had conversations with Jimmy Scanlon, and I know that Jimmy is looking for an appropriate thing, and the board has not been presented to the board as of yet, but I know Jimmy is working on something.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield, did you want to be?
No, I'm all set.
Okay. All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion is adopted. Next motion is by Councilor Donahue. The City Council requests the City Manager have the MIS Department make available a list of paper streets on the city's website, seconded by Councilor Elliott. Councilor Donahue.
Thank you. I don't know whether it should read list or just have paper streets available on the website, whether that be, if MIS could accomplish that task. I don't know whether it would be through engineering maps or what have you. Actually, I just noticed we got an email tonight on our desk about this, and this might be the same person who called recently. Paper streets show up only as lines on the website, and some people have fences thinking they own land and which houses can be built, etc. We all know that there are a number of paper streets in the city, and what that means is, for people who don't know, or best I understand, is streets that the city's never accepted, never built on. And in some cases, we've abandoned paper streets when 2 landowners on each side have petitioned the city. But in other cases, they're still out there, and maybe they look like they belong to someone's, property, but don't. And I think the request is because there's so much available online now that if there is a paper street in your neighborhood or by your house, is there a place you can go and look? I mean, clearly you can come down to City Hall and probably, come up with where the paper streets are. But is there some way of doing that online? This may be complicated, I don't know. It's very complicated? Okay. I said I would ask about that. Can we get a report back in terms of what's involved and so forth? But it seemed like a reasonable request to try and find out, is it possible? So.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the motion because I know that I've had conversations with you, Mr. McCarthy, as well, that, what is the responsibility of the city versus the homeowner and who owns up to what point or on that paper street. And I think it would be good to clarify, and we should either dispose of these streets and give, land ownership to probably those people that have been taking care of it, or the city maintains it. I know that I called you on a tree in Pawtucketville that almost hit the people's, individuals' houses. And it's really not clear who has that responsibility for that tree. Is that correct?
Mr. McCarthy?
I mean, the city went up to take care of the tree, but it sort of begs the question.
Right, there's some specific law on that, which if the city doesn't really act on that or own it or repair it or maintain it, then it would go basically.
It reverts to the homeowner that lives next to it, right?
Exactly. It's just, it's a complicated process to do this electronically. It's in paper up in the engineer's office, but to get that into electronic format, just because we kind of do the opposite. At the Registry of Deeds, the GIS map is based on addresses on accepted streets. So it's almost the paper streets are formed by those areas which aren't encompassed by the Registry of Deeds.
Approximately how many do we have? Paper streets that,
We'll get your report in a list. At least I think we can start there, and then eventually we can get it online.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilor Donahue?
Yeah, maybe if it's possible, maybe the actual laying out the streets on the website is difficult, but maybe if there can be a list of where they're located, even by in general description, so that, let's say I want to know, I look in my neighborhood or whatever, then at least it gives me notice to say, oh, there is a paper street around here. Maybe I can go down the engineer's, until it's feasible to put it on the web.
Okay, Councilor Rita Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the Assistant City Manager, TJ. Is it possible that you could give us an explanation as to what happens when the city abandons the paper street and it is left to the abutters? Because it seems like, let's say that X Street is a paper street, and let's say that the city comes forward and says we want to abandon that paper street and give it, it's a 20-foot wide street, paper street, so we're giving 10 to one abutter and 10 to the other side. Does it mean that everyone along that X street is entitled to 10 feet, but say that the person in between those properties doesn't want to be a part of that? Does he have to be? Because I had a request to look into this at one point, and I think that they have no choice, that it was in so much in litigation that they never had to pay the taxes, and then finally the court said, yes, X Street was given 10 feet to them and 10 feet to this side, and through the long process, it finally was cleared and made right, and people that didn't want any part of it were now being taxed on that property that they didn't want any part of, which all the other neighbors did. So if we could have an explanation as to the procedure and who is responsible.
That's sort of a trick question. You were correct up to the 7 point, 10 feet on each side.
Right.
There's probably something else we have to add.
Clarification or something. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, as long as I get the opportunity to weigh in on that memo. Okay, then, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Any opposed? The motion's adopted. The next motion is by Councilor Donahue. Request the City Council explore the possibility of changing the independent auditor for the City of Lowell. Seconded by Councilor Elliott. Councilor Donahue.
Thank you. The purpose of this motion is not to be critical in any way of the independent auditor Powers and Sullivan. It's twofold. One is to find out what the process is. Do we have a contract? When is the contract for? How do we go about contracting with the independent auditor? And one of my concerns is that I think they've been the independent auditor for a long time, at least as far back as I can remember. There may have been a different one. But for 10 years, I think they've been it, or most of those 10 years. And just in industry standards, whether it be, you know, a institution, a hospital, or what have you, you usually change independent auditors every either 5 years or 10 years, but they shouldn't be a permanent fixture, because that's the whole point. They're supposed to be independent. They shouldn't become so familiar. And one of the concerns, and again, this isn't suggesting that Powers and Sullivan would do this, but if you don't change them, they can be covering up their own errors by not reporting to you. And so there's a whole lot of reasons why you change them periodically. So I'd like to know how long Powers and Sullivan has been here. What's our process? I don't think it's a 30B because it's services. Is it the council who okays the contract? And then, you know, because of all the difficulties, I mean, this occurred to me back in December, because of all the difficulties we had with the whole business of, and I'm not laying it at the independent auditor's feet, but coming in and certifying free cash and all the nonsense that we went through in December, it just occurred to me that let's find out where we stand. You know, they do come in once a year, they go through, they look at the books and so forth, but I think it's prudent to change on a periodic basis. And so that's the intent of the motion. If we can get the information regarding Powers and Sullivan, what's their status, how long they've been here, and then what's the process for selecting a new independent auditor for the city. I think it would be healthy and good to have someone else on board.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I know they've been here as long as I've been here, Councilor, so I don't know how long before that they got here. I can tell you that there are only in Massachusetts maybe a handful of these types of firms. Powers and Sullivan are the biggest. They do most cities and towns. I believe they do the city of Boston. Maybe not Boston, but they do many of the other cities. The Department of Revenue just hired them to do Springfield's books. So they obviously are very highly thought of. But I don't know how long they've been here and what the situation is with their contract, but we'll get you that all that information.
And I'm not suggesting they're not competent or reputable. It's just that it just seems to me that cities are just like any other businesses. If they are truly independent, then periodically they should be switched. Just and it's just a standard. But that's the intent of the motion.
Hey, Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does that go out on the bid process? What? Excuse me?
To be honest with you, Council, I don't know. I mean, I really don't know.
No one knows if that goes
No,
out in the bid
They
process?
would not. They would not. They would
They
be
do
exempt.
not go out in the bid process?
They would be exempt. You could hire who you wanted.
So the city could
They're-
hire?
I mean, just like, yeah, I mean, potentially any expert, whether it be an attorney, a
Okay.
doctor, an
So the city could
accountant.
hire any
Correct.
independent, okay.
Right.
Councilor Elliott?
Well, isn't it the responsibility of you, Mr. Auditor, to go out for a solicitation? And you do, I think the maximum is a 3-year time frame, is it not?
Correct. The CPAs usually have a 3-year contract. And they have an extension of 1 or 2 years after the 3-year contract.
How long have we had Powers and Sullivan?
I know we've had them for at least 5 years anyways.
Okay, so can you recall, or maybe Mr. Kennedy, what was the process? I do recall that there was a solicitation process, was there not, that you can either get 3 individuals?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, that was a public bid.
Right.
I mean, it was Barbara Hagg who hired them, and it was a bid.
Okay, well, I'll look forward to the report, but I think it's important that we do get, some solicitation out, and, I'm sorry,
I was
Madam
just going to
Auditor.
add, I mean, there's nothing, if it's exempt, but that doesn't mean that we can't
Right.
obviously go forward with a solicitation.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion's adopted. Next motion is by Councilor Broderick. City Council requests that the city auditor provide a detailed report on specifics of the account the $290,000 settlement for Jackson Construction was paid from. Second by Councilor Ramirez. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is self-explanatory. Mr. Auditor, what account was this money paid from?
The $290,000 is taken in unobligated appropriations.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Unobligated appropriations.
I'm not too sure what that is. Could you explain that?
Well, the first thing is that when they set up, they put in appropriations for all items that that they're going to, like construction. They have salaries and wages. You had demolitions, acquisition of land. You have to have a budget for each one of those. Out of the over $20 million for the school, start close to school, you had 300 and probably maybe $10 that was unappropriated, and which was called unobligated. It wasn't obligated to a specific item. The $290,000 came out of the unobligated appropriations, and that's what it was paid out of.
Okay. Thank you.
If I may.
Mr. Manager, yeah.
Just, Mr. Auditor, that was the extra million, that was the extra $1 million that was appropriated at the subcommittee, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Councilor, you finished?
Well, yes, we can follow up on the next one.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion's adopted. Next motion by Councilor Broderick. City Council requests the city auditor provide a detailed accounting of the construction loan account for the Stocklosa School. Seconded by Councilor Milanazzo. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess, not to get into it now, because we probably should have some type of documentation provided to us, and I think I'm the chairman of the Auditor Oversight Subcommittee, but with all the other subcommittee meetings, I haven't had an opportunity to meet. I'll lay it out for you, Mr. Auditor. My concern is that you made a $290,000 payment that was different than the other 50 payments you made for the school, and you didn't feel the need to advise the council. Now, I wasn't on at the time, but my concern is that these things, in my opinion, and everybody here has their own opinion, and they're entitled to their own vote. This should have been flagged. The manager's been called to the carpet on it, and in my opinion, the manager works for us, and so do you. And the fact that it was made without even a peep from your office, or I guess since I wasn't here, I shouldn't make the assumption, but without some type of report filed with the council, and we found out in October, 5 months after it was made. To say it concerns me is an understatement, and that's the purpose of my motion. And I'm concerned that there might have been other payments that we don't know about. And I would like a detailed report of the account from your office. And if it's going to take,
you'll have it in your packets at Friday.
Okay. And then what I'll do after we get it is call a subcommittee meeting that maybe you can give us. I know I'm going to need a presentation in terms of an explanation. I'm not probably going to understand the different accounts in unobligated funds versus whatever else is in there.
The detailed count will be by the purchase orders of the people that we purchased the goods from, and it'll have the date of the payment, the amount of the payment, and we'll have the total count of the purchase order with it, so that you'll have the whole detail of the whole thing.
Okay. Councilor Donahue.
Thank you. Mr. Auditor, going back to the unobligated fund, that what's left in that fund?
There's probably about $310 left in it.
$310.
Or maybe $30,000, I think, is left in that fund.
$30,000 is left in it?
Yep.
Now, when you say unobligated, I'm confused, because we did bond extra money on the project.
Well,
bonded extra money because we understood it was going to cost extra money.
Right. Let me explain unobligated. Unobligated is what happens is that supposed to have an income of $23 million. And from that income that we got to have expenditures of $23 million. And each expenditure has to be broken out by line item. Now, whatever isn't spent or expensed out at that line item goes into unobligated money. So that if you come through with a change order, and the construction change order has to come out of the unobligated portion. So that as you go along over the year, or whatever the construction time is, you either use up all the unobligated money or you have money left over in the unobligated account.
But, and not speaking from accounting terms, but when you do have a change order,
Right.
then it's attributed to a particular item or expense, right?
It's an additional amount to the original contract.
Right, but when you do your accounting, the state's going to audit this project, like they do all the school building
correct.
projects, because they give us 90% reimbursement. Now, there's some things that are eligible, some things that aren't,
Right.
depending. So at some point, the state will go over these books with a fine-tooth comb. Now, you're going to have to attribute that $290,000 to something, correct?
I listed it as a settlement, unobligated. When it came out of unobligated, it's listed on the accounting side as a settlement with Jackson Construction.
Yeah, but the state isn't going to just give you 90% of that because you call it just a settlement.
Well, I don't know what the state's going to do, but the thing is
But
that,
you've been involved in closing the books on school building projects before, haven't you? We've done several.
Yeah, we've done a couple about.
Yeah, and they want to know each and every expense and whether it qualifies.
That's correct. And we list them all, we give them all the backup, we give them all the invoices, and we give them everything that
Right.
goes with it.
So you can't give them a round figure like this and expect them to give you 90% reimbursement, can you?
I probably say no.
Right. Well, I look forward to the report that is being requested, and, I'm sure we'll have other questions at that point.
Okay.
Okay, Councilor Ramirez?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Auditor, just so that I understand, for the $290,000 payment, on your report to Mr. Broderick and the auditor, you're not going to be submitting a change order then? You're going to be submitting the
It's just a.
settlement demand, the paperwork that the law department handed you?
Correct.
Okay.
It should be noted on the bottom of Jackson's total sheet of the $16 million. It adds up. And what it will have on the bottom, settlement with Jackson for $290,000. It won't have no purchase order, it won't have nothing, it's just the date it was paid. And then it'll tie out to the total amount of the contract plus the change orders and the retainage. Okay?
Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Fernandez, how much money was there ever in that account, the unobligated account?
Unobligated
At one
started
time.
out with probably maybe $500,000.
$500,000?
Yes, it did.
And was any part of that money used for change orders during the construction of the Stock Closer School?
90% of it was used for change orders.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, Councilor Elliott?
Thank you. Mr. Auditor, just to get, probably speaking non-accounting language, that's really a contingency fund unobligated. Meaning when we signed a contract for 17,095, that was for the construction of the school, including a contingency account. Correct? You're saying unobligated, it's a
Well,
contingency
it's-
fund. It's money that has to be set aside by law for any for any overruns or change orders, any unexpected changes on site.
You could call it contingency, yes.
Well, it's required by law, though. You have to set aside a certain percentage. You can't just go through a project and say, this is what the bid was, and, we're hoping that it'll come in for that dollar figure, and And most of the time, it doesn't. And that's why there is a contingency, right?
That's
What
correct.
percentage is required by law?
That I wouldn't know.
I guess there is some
Yeah.
flexibility because we had to adjust it on certain projects. But I think the concern is of the 290, and we've had the discussion in the Stocklosis School, what was it for? And I know we're requesting that information, and I think the concern is that there was an itemized list for all of these other payments, and I was clear to raise that motion. What was this for, other than a settlement? What was the settlement for? And I have to say that I have some concerns and reservations that was paid without that additional documentation. So I think that's what we're trying to get to. I'm not on the audit oversight, but I'll look forward to attending the meeting to try to get more information. And this is where we're coming from. What was it for? Are we working on that, Madam Solicitor? I know that was part of it. And I
Right,
think the
we have-
reimbursement is important because DOE will come in and say, what was this for? And a settlement just probably won't cut the mustard with them.
It might not, it might. I mean, I think there are cases because litigation in some form is part, unfortunately, of the added cost of construction, and it's somewhat typical. It's hard to necessarily do a major construction project, and not necessarily result in some level of litigation. And I think for those reasons, they do at least consider those types of things, and it's certainly something that we would pursue. But as far as where we are, there is a meeting scheduled for this coming Thursday, and there's a litany of items that we're going to be discussing with the bonding company, and this is certainly, top on the list.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Milonazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Auditor, did I hear you correctly? Did you say that you paid that bill without a purchase order? I did.
What, the $290,000?
Yes.
I paid the $290,000 from the law office. They sent it down, in which they said that it was a settlement, a litigation settlement, and to be paid at a certain time. And then I asked them for a backup with a blue voucher that goes with it, and so forth and so on, before I would pay it. And they sent everything down, and it was paid. As far as the detail portion of it, I don't have any portion of what the detail was.
But again, for you to be able to pay the bill, you would have had to have a PO number.
No, if it was signed off for a settlement, it was signed off by the law department, the manager, or whatever, we can accept that to be paid. But most purchase orders or anything under contract has to be going through the purchase order system.
But again, if it was part of the Jackson construction contract, and if there was $500,000 in this unobligated account, I mean, that contract had a purchase order to it, didn't it?
No, it's the contract. The contract with Jackson was for all his charges. When I received the settlement, or when I received the paper down from the law office, my question was, is there supposed to be a contract with this? Okay, and the answer was that it's a settlement because it was in litigation, and that's why it was paid. Outside that, it wouldn't have been paid.
Okay, well, again, I look forward to getting the report. You, just one more point you made on the unobligated funds, where you said that 90% of the dollar amount, which you said was $500,000, was paid. Change orders were paid out of that account. So that would be about $450,000 in change orders. Then if you take that 290 out of that account, it leaves you with 100 and whatever. Let me do the math. But
Well, that was hypothetically, because I didn't give you the right figures. I didn't give you the correct bottom line figures in the unobligated. Okay.
Okay. Well, I guess that's what we need.
Because that can vary from $500,000. It could vary to $600,000 depending on the time of the construction. Because as each time goes on and they get change orders, it has to come out of the unappropriated amount of money.
Right. Again, I'm following up on Council Caulfield's question. What was the highest amount in that account? And the
I'd have
answer
to
was,
go back and do an analysis on the total unobligated.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilor Donahue.
Mr. Auditor, all right, look, you keep talking about litigation. There was no litigation. I mean, here's the problem. You, as the auditor, I mean, you don't pay for a paperclip unless you have proper documentation. I mean, isn't that true? You need that, and that's your job. You're the gatekeeper of the finances.
That's correct.
All right, so when you make a lump sum payment of $290,000, you're saying litigation, but there was no litigation. And so, you know, and I understand you were doing this because that's what you were told to do, but your job is to look for backup documentation. Your office does it all the time. You put people through their paces to get, you know, a ream of paper paid for. And so I guess the reason the questions are coming at you is because $290,000 was paid out the door to a contractor who had already been paid millions, but you don't know what, even today you don't know what you paid him that for. That's the problem. And when you say it was a settlement of litigation, there was no litigation. And so from the auditor's point of view, and I understand you didn't make that decision, but from the auditor's point of view, that's where the stop sign goes up and says, whoa, wait a minute, I'm not paying this unless I have proper proof. That's the reason for all these inquiries. So, you know, I mean, we can go over this and over this, but I mean, the first time we heard about it was when you told us at that October meeting about the $290,000 payment. Now the inquiry has moved to what did we pay it for? We still don't know, and we also don't know why you paid it without insisting on proof of what you're paying the money for. So, you know, I mean, let it go to the Auditor's Oversight Committee, but we have to, and anything coming in after the fact, I mean, Mr. Auditor, if, let's suppose the mayor's office wanted to order a computer and ordered a computer, just said, you know, here, pay this bill, I'll tell you what it's for later. You wouldn't pay it. You wouldn't pay it. You'd look to the budget and you'd say, okay, is there a computer budgeted there? Let me see the PO. I mean, you would not just pay, you wouldn't just cut a check for $10,000 and say, prove it to me later, a year later, in a whole different budget cycle. You would just never do that. So that's the reasons for the questions of finding out what the heck happened here, what is going on, and let's just get some answers for a change.
Okay, Councilor Broderick.
Thank you. Mr. Auditor, to follow up on what Councilor Donahue said, I really am concerned and would like an explanation as to, you sat here tonight, said you paid $290,000, and we may not be reimbursed at 90%, which is, we'll find out eventually, but you didn't feel the need to even to tell the council, to advise them. That's what bothers me. I personally don't want to sit here and feel like I have to be an investigator and follow up on what's going on with you, and I think that's something, if you make a payment like that, not sure if we're going to get paid back, at the very least, it should have been brought to the council's attention. Like I said, I wasn't on the council at the time, but the concern is that there's no communication there, and I hope you'll have some type of answer for that when we do meet at the subcommittee level.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. The last motion is mine. Any objection to read it from here? Motion is for the City Council request the City Manager have the proper department repair the guardrail barrier at 2426 Liberty Street, including the concrete sidewalk. Seconded by Councilor Elliott. Mr. Manager, this is a similar situation to what we have at the end of the connector, and that's a constituent request to have that repaired. So all those in favor of that motion say aye. Any opposed? Motion is approved. Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, before you adjourn.
Yes, Councilor Caulfield.
Very briefly, Mr. Mayor, I know it's been a long evening. Through you to the manager. Mr. Manager, we're going to have a world-class event in our city within days. April 6th, I think it is, the curling event.
April 1st to the 9th.
Right. And I think we've all brought up this issue. I was down by the Lowell Sun looking in the canals, and it was a report in the paper. The canals, people come to this city. I know you've been working hard, putting mulch and sprucing the city up, and the Parks Department's working hard, the DPW. But the thing that will remain in their minds, the longest, is those canals. And I don't know if they're gonna be full of water or they're gonna be clean, but whoever owns them, we should hold their feet to the fire and make them clean those canals. They are a disgrace.
Council, believe me, at this
least
point,
fill
we
them
just
up.
want water in the canals at this point. We just want water in the canals at this
Yes.
point. That's,
It's-
we'll be happy with that.
And you know what, it will
I
probably
don't
hide
mean
a
to make light of
multitude
it.
of sins, but that's a sin too, if we just
Well,
fill it up with water.
I mean, in all fairness to all parties, there was a problem with, as everybody knows, at the boot. The canals had to be drained for that. We are working very closely with the National Park. They are working very closely with the people who control the water to make sure that this water is there. We fully expect it to be there when the curling starts.
Okay. Councilor Rita Mercia.
Very briefly, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to comment, and I know that our city employees get paid. Be that as it may, I went around the lot overpass on St. Patrick's Day, and I know the color it brought to mind is green, but they did a tremendous job with the Landon buildings, and they painted all the railing along the lot overpass, and it made that area shine. And I think that's what this city is all about, and they did it all in one day. Now, having said that, I don't know why the state can't give some paint. I'll even put in $100 to get some special paint around the Hunts Falls Bridge, which is the Holmes Quinn Bridge. And when they had about 10 Mass Highway Department trucks there, cleaning the dirt from the islands, I stopped and asked if they could put in a requisition or some order to get some paint to do they said there's no money available. Now, come on, what's up with that? I mean, it's a gateway into the city. How many times have we all spoken about it? And it took one day to do the lot overpass. Why can't the state be a friendly partner and make this city shine?
Welcome to our world,
I know,
Councilor.
I'm so frustrated with that. But I want to thank the Landon Buildings for a tremendous job. I actually rolled down my window and gave them a hurrah.
Okay. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just follow up on the issue of the canals, Mr. Manager? It really is embarrassing, and we feel, and I'm not pointing the finger, but why can't we do anything when they can, shut the water off?
Again,
I mean, it seems like, we go through eminent domain, we can take land, we can do this, but we can't get someone we can't even let volunteers get in the canals to clean them. And I happened to be at a hardware store on Saturday, and there was an individual and they're going in, and they said that they were going in to clean anyway, and they were going to have to literally pull them out of the canals if they didn't want to clean them up. Why can't we take proceedings to go in and clean them, and then do we have no leverage with real estate taxes or tax lien or something?
Councilor, we are trying and have been trying for years to get this worked out. We're working closely with the National Park. We're working with the volunteer group. It's just not as easy as it looks. I don't know why it isn't. It should be. It should be simple.
It should be simple.
It should be very simple, but it isn't, apparently, obviously.
Who are the owners? Can you tell?
What's the name of it? Locks and Canals.
So it's Locks and Canals.
Whoever it is, it's not as simple as it should be, clearly. We have the National Park fully involved. They had, to make matters worse recently, they had to drain the canals because of the problems at the boot. Obviously, everything was exposed. We understand it's there. We know it's there. We've been trying to work to get it out of there. And why it's taking so long and why it's so difficult, I can't explain it to you. Michael Creasy can't explain it to you. Everybody we're working with has been trying to get on the same page. I think we're making some progress, but we just want water in those canals for the curling thing at this point.
I agree.
And that's what we're working on.
And we shouldn't. And I don't
I
discount.
don't think
Mr. Manager.
that's a large request, but
yeah, it doesn't seem like a large request, and I don't discount that we are trying because it's been up before. I think Council Mercia, that was a huge issue way back when. But through you to the solicitor, there's no legal ramifications that we can impose on this company for not complying with. We have ordinances to ensure people paint their houses. Never mind, leave, which really is a public, a public
Right.
use.
Right. It would appear to be clearly a public nuisance. We can go after private landowners. I think in this particular case, I know that in the past it had been looked at. I wasn't the one that had looked at it, and I don't know offhand, but it might be some jurisdictional issue that we don't have jurisdiction over them. Something along those lines, I think. And otherwise, we would have the authority to order them to clean it up, and if they didn't clean it up ourselves and slap a lien on the property. But again, I think it has to do, similar to, for example, the trains. That's another problem with the train tracks that we run into, is a jurisdictional issue. We can certainly, I mean, it's certainly well worth a look again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilor Donahue.
Just in follow, I mean, that research was done several years ago, and there was like a land grant back in the 1700s, and it is the most bizarre ownership rights that these canal people, the Boot Hydro, have, that, and maybe someone else too now who's in on it with them, but it's crazy. In the city, I mean, you know, they own the rights and everything, but aren't responsible for cleanup, and you can't make them, and nor will they let people, because they say there's high-powered lines in there, so they claim they can keep people out. It's a horrible situation that may require legislation. I mean, to change
another
that.
King's Grant, maybe.
Yeah, well, we better call, Queen of England or something, because this is just, it's been centuries that, and no other city, I think, in Massachusetts has this arrangement.
I've not heard of that.
In Holyoke, the city of Holyoke owns the canals, but now it's a private company. But, so it's just bizarre that you can't actually drain it, clean it when you want,
Right. I agree.
Okay. Right. All right, there is the manager has just reported to me, has requested a motion to go into executive session to discuss litigation strategy, an ongoing litigation case, or two cases, I believe.
One case this evening.
One case. Is there a motion to do that? So moved by Councilor Elliott, second.
State the purpose of the case.
Madam Solicitor? Right. Do
We're
we
not
have to say the name of the case?
And
Drake it? All right, so it's the case is the City of Lowell versus the towns of Drake and Tewksbury. The motion to go into executive session and then adjourn.
Recess or adjourn from executive.
Right, so that we will not reconvene in regular session. So moved by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Donahue. Roll call, please.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Armin Mercia? Yes. Councilor Rita Mercia?
Reluctantly, but I will go.
Councilor Milanazzo?
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez? Yep. Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Okay.
7 yeas and 2 reluctances.
Okay, so we will convene in executive session and then recess the meeting from there. No subcommittee, no nothing.
Boom, boom.